Hello and welcome back to another GiantSlayerTV Synergies tier list video. Today our analysts will be ranking each Synergy from S all the way down to the C tier for patch 12.11. This is our first tier list for Dragonlands, and with that comes a couple of things worth mentioning. First off, there has been a micro patch that nerfs a few specific problem champions in the meta, and that will likely affect the compositions they're a part of. We'll make note of those synergies, but since the meta hasn't had time to settle, we won't be changing their placement on the tier list. And in general, take this first tier list with a grain of salt, as we expect to see a lot of meta shifts over the course of patch 12.11. With that said, we can get started off with the S tier synergies. This tier consists of the traits Astral, Mage, Dragon, Bard, Starcaller, Mystic, and Guild. Our usual criteria is the same, as all of these synergies are key parts in the current meta. At the top of the S tier, we have Astral. Right away, let's go ahead and point out that both Nami and Varus have received nerfs from the micro patch, and rather heavy ones at that. This is likely to affect Astral a lot, but how much is yet to be seen. That said, Astral still has a lot going for it. Mostly the fact that Astral makes 3-starring its champions super easy. Like, ridiculously easy. So even if Nami and Varus are weaker, chances are having them 3-starred is still pretty good. The nerfs potentially mean full Astral boards are less common, but it's tough to say otherwise. Plus, in the late game, Mage Aurelion Soul is plenty strong, and that alone keeps Astral near the top of the meta. Speaking of, let's talk about Mage. Mage also took a hit with Nami and Sylas being nerfed. This is a bit more of a detriment to the Mage composition because Nami 3 in Stage 3 was insanely good at win-streaking a Mage board to the late game. Additionally, Sylas has been a crucial part of the Mage frontline, and if he's much weaker in that role, Mage boards will struggle. But don't worry, Mage is still quite good until they fix the mana bug, and having a Mage emblem can still make one of the strongest boards in the game with Aurelion Soul. And in general, the ease at which Mage boards can stabilize early into the game means top 4ing with them should remain consistent. The nerfs mostly affect how well Mage does in the late game, where having a weaker frontline is much more of a problem. Overall, Mage should remain strong, but players will need to look for additional frontline, with Sylas being nerfed. Moving on, we have the Dragon Synergy. Turns out dragons are quite good. Some are better than others, but having a dragon on your board is quite common for most comps. One major reason Dragon is doing well is because of the Dragon Horde and Dragon Alliance augments that let you play more than one dragon, because what's better than one dragon? 2. Or 3, or 4 if you have the board space. Definitely nice to see dragons doing well after a similar trait, Colossus, was a giant dud in set 6. Next up is Bard, the trait for Bard. Basically, as far as splash champions go, Bard is one of the best, if not the best, in set 7. Toss in Bard, get a free guild buff, Mystic becomes viable, and he's really good CC ability. Following that up are the Dudes, which increase the shop odds of higher cost champions. Probably one of the best splash champions we've ever had in TFT. A contender for that spot would be Soraka with Starcaller. Much like Bard, you can toss Soraka in at any point and get value. Being able to heal your own health pool can be a game changer, taking you from a potential 5th to a 4th or a 3rd to a 2nd. Even though it's only a small amount of healing, it's still extra health. Soraka in general is quite good, but Starcaller definitely elevates her to top tier status. At the end of this tier, we have the two synergies, Mystic and Guild. It may seem odd at first to put these two together, but we have one word for you: Bard. Bard has both synergies, meaning it's super easy to splash in both traits. Heck, just Bard alone is enough for Guild, and Guild has other splash champions like Twitch and Rise. Mystic has fewer champions to work with, but guess who's good right now? Lulu. Oh, and Nami, but she was nerfed. But Lulu, on the other hand, was not and is quite good in the current meta, making Mystic easy to splash in. Point is, Bard makes both Mystic and Guild really good for splashing in, and both synergies have other worthwhile champions that are playable in the meta. Time to move on to the A tier, which consists of the traits Trainer, Bruiser, Spell Thief, Swift Shot, Whispers, Evoker, Tempest, Cavalier, and Shimmer Scale. This tier is the bread and butter of the meta, with lots of synergies that are part of the top compositions or provide value to them. Remember Lulu? Yep, she's also a Trainer, and Trainer is a hugely important synergy in the current meta for mages. Granted, the nerfs may affect this, but the Trainer champions with Namzi do provide a solid backbone for any mage board in the early and mid portions of the game. Heimerdinger is definitely the main reason for this and manages to stay relevant all game due to his stun. The main issue with Trainer is Namzi takes a while to ramp up, but having a free unit on the board is always useful in the early game. There's all kinds of front lines to talk about in set 7, but the most versatile is definitely Bruiser. The reason for this is because so many of the Bruiser champions have 3 synergies. Sylas, Olaf, Shen, Ornn, and Saifen are all 3 synergy champions, with Saifen being a big old dragon. Because of those champions, it's a lot easier to flex in a Bruiser frontline, and while only health bonus doesn't scale well in the late game, it's still a well-rounded stat to have for your frontliners. Spell Thief is the solo synergy for Zoe, and it makes Zoe one of the better utility champions of the set. Again, we should mention the mage nerfs, but Zoe doesn't necessarily mind them as she's a late game champion. All of the Spell Thief spells are useful, which in turn makes Zoe useful, so don't shy away from using her. Varus may have received some nerfs, but Swift Shot is still an overall decent synergy in the current meta. Xayah is quite good as a 4-cost carry, and even though he was nerfed, Varus 3 should still remain relevant. It's not that interesting of a synergy as it's just bonus attack speed and some range, but it's an important part of Xayah and Varus' kits. We're on the fence about Whispers because they did heavily nerf the synergy on live from PvE. It's still good, but mostly due to the shrink effect that reduces the enemy's armor and MR. Whispers also has quite a few strong champions like Saifen, Pyke, and before the nerf, Sylas, plus Elise is a potential carry. Definitely a strong synergy, but how strong is hard to say just yet. Evoker definitely took a dip in value from PvE to live, especially with the Sona nerfs. That said, it's still a useful synergy for the Evoker champions, and Sona is a great utility champion, kinda like Seraphine from set 6. Overall, no complaints here about Evoker. Tempest is an interesting synergy because it's mostly a splash trade, but a lot of the Tempest units are quite good, like Kiana, Lee Sin, Ornn, and Aoshin. Even Ezreal is useful in the early game, but full Tempest boards are rare because the trait only pops off once in a fight for a short stun and a bit of damage, so it's technically better to just splash it in than it is to play vertically. Definitely a weird synergy, but still plenty useful. Another frontline synergy in A tier is Cavalier. Cavalier is a huge boost in defensive stats and makes the units go vroom. Most importantly, Hecarim is a Cavalier, and he's one of the best frontliners of set 7 thanks to his CC. All in all, Cavalier is a well-rounded synergy. At the end of the A tier, we have Shimmer Scale. Shimmer Scale is tough to place because it can almost be S tier in value, but sometimes it's closer to C. That said, on average, it's going to provide a lot of value thanks to the amount of gold you can farm with the Shimmer Scale items. Oh, and Idis is pretty much the best frontliner in the set, which definitely helps the synergy a lot. With that, we can move into the B tier, which consists of the synergies Revel, Ragewing, Mirage, Jade, Scale Scorn, Warrior, Dragonmancer, and Cannoneer. While these traits aren't as valuable as the tiers above them, they are still important in the current meta. Kicking off this tier is Revel. Revel used to be absolutely bonkers, but after several nerfs and making it much harder to find a Revel emblem, the synergy has lost a lot of value in the meta. It's still good in the right situation, but it's certainly not overpowered like it was on the PvE. Ragewing is an odd synergy because it has a ton of champions and does provide a good bonus, but Ragewing champions don't gain mana from taking damage. Additionally, the time it takes between casts is fairly long. Luckily, fast-attacking champions like Xayah don't notice this too much, but it is still a problem. Overall, Ragewing is in a decent spot because it has so many playable champions, but the synergy itself is a bit meh. Mirage is the mutant of this set, and that means it's ridiculously inconsistent. It's heavily dependent on the Mirage variant of the game being good, and oftentimes it's not worth playing. That said, Deja is still a good mid-game carry, and Yasuo is a beast late game, so there's definitely a way to make Mirage work. Early game Jade is amazing because of the healing, but the later the game goes, the less valuable Jade is as a synergy. Xiaoyu does add some late game scaling, but Jade is tough to top 4 with, especially since you really have to commit to the synergy to play it. It's not bad, but definitely inconsistent, so we mostly recommend only using Jade in stages 2 and 3, maybe 4 with Xiaoyu and Nico. Scale Scorn and Warrior are both essentially the same thing, buffs to Olaf. Warrior does have Yone and Yasuo, while Diana is a Scale Scorn, but let's be real, both of those synergies are there for Olaf. If you have a good Olaf opener, these synergies are great. If not, you can basically ignore them. Dragonmancer is weird because Yasuo is ridiculously good, yet none of the other Dragonmancers are near that level. Volibear barely gets played as a carry, Swain struggles against most meta boards, and Lee Sin is just a frontliner. The main issue with Dragonmancer is it's all or nothing since the buff only affects one unit. If that unit is Yasuo, the synergy is good. If it's another unit, well, maybe don't play Dragonmancer. Finally, for B tier, we have Cannoneer. Cannoneer lives and dies off of Corki's viability in the meta. While Corki is certainly playable right now, we definitely wouldn't say he's a top tier meta carry. Interestingly enough, Cannoneer is a lot like Twin Shot from set 6, as it gets way better when you have good augments for it. Without those augments, Cannoneer is definitely forgettable. And now for the C tier, which consists of the traits Assassin, Guardian, Shapeshifter, and Legend. There's no truly abysmal synergies in set 7 like there was in previous sets, but these 4 synergies provide the least amount of value in the current meta. Assassins are struggling mostly because there's a lack of consistent carry, but also a lot of late game boards just CC the Assassins and win out with positioning. Pyke and Diana are both strong champions, but the meant-to-be carry of the set, Talon, is just not good right now. Until a more consistent Assassin carry shows up, Assassins are likely to remain at the bottom of the meta. Okay, we did say Idis is the best frontliner in the set, and they are a Guardian, but Guardian is just way too lackluster otherwise. Yes, is good for Idis, but the other Guardians are all low tier and provide no CC other than the Thresh Hook. Overall, very lacking frontline synergy. Also lacking is Shapeshifters. There's not really too much reason to use the synergy currently beyond a few niche situations. Most of the time, Shapeshifter is played because of the composition, like Gnar and Nico or Swain and Shyvana. Committing to Shapeshifter is rare because all it gives is more health and only to those champions. If there was a consistent and viable Shapeshifter carry, we'd definitely up the value for this synergy, but as is, it's definitely quite low in value totem pole. And at the bottom of the C tier is Yordle Lord. Okay, just kidding, it's Legend. Legend, thankfully, is nowhere near as bad as Yordle Lord, but it is definitely not doing well currently. The issue with Legend is the lack of a carry because Volibear maybe does well in 1 out of 20 games and Anivia is utility while Ornn is a frontliner. So if Volibear isn't viable, Legend isn't. They may need to rework Legend or at least buff Volibear before it can lose the crown of worst meta trait. And that's all for today, folks. Overall, the balance is pretty good for a release patch and the out-of-line synergies are already being hotfixed. Just keep in mind it'll take a few days for the meta to settle. Let us know in the comment section below what your favorite synergy is for patch 12.11. Remember to check out the Giant Slayer TFT socials in the description below to keep up to date with any news, shows, or other content. Thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future Giant Slayer TFT videos.